Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final episode of Gemcutting Conversations. It is the full moon before the winter solstice, and the world is wild, I think. My name's Justin K. Prim. Hopefully, you know that by now because I would hope that on the last episode, this isn't your first episode, but if it is, then I'll be your host as usual. So just before we get into tonight's conversation, I just wanted to highlight how many incredible conversations we've had already in the last so many months. We can see 4, 8, 16 guests, including tonight, from around the world. I put together a few stats. So we started this last year, September, which was already basically so many, maybe 9 months into COVID. And we've been talking to gem cutters from so many countries, 10 countries, 16 guests, 30 hours of lapidary wisdom. So if you missed any of these, they are all up on my YouTube channel in full. I didn't edit them, they're just there. And hopefully for the future, this is a kind of a cool archive. So I've decided that this will be the last episode. Next year, we're leaving for the entire year. We're going to be traveling around. So if you are in Europe or America, come say hi. We're going to be researching the history of gem cutting in America, as well as a bit in Europe as well, making a documentary, and probably visiting a fair amount of these gem cutters in person so that we can bring our camera and get their stories to go into our master story that we're going to be working on. So that's what we're doing next year. But for tonight, we are concluding the Gemcutting Conversations webinar series with our friend Mark Oros, who you might know as Hashnu Stones. I've known Mark, I don't know, on and off the internet for I think a bunch of years now. Well, actually, he reminded me, and maybe we'll even get to this. When I was first starting faceting, Mark reminded me that I gave him a call. I don't know, I must have found him on the internet. I gave him a call because I was looking for a mentor, and he said, I'm just getting started with faceting too. He was doing all kinds of other stuff, which I'm sure he's about to tell us. So I guess I've known Mark indirectly for like 8 years or so, 8 or 9 years, something like that. So maybe he's my oldest gem friend. So I guess we'll just get into it. Mark, if you're ready, come on in and we will start the final party of the year. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good morning. How's it going?
It's going very well, thank you. It's a little blustery here. We're getting a little bit of snow in New York, but to be expected this time of year.
Yeah. For us, it's been a cool week for Bangkok, which is still really hot for most of the rest of the world, but we haven't been sweating as much this week, so it's been a nice relief for us.
Nice. So, well, thank you for having me. It's both a pleasure and an honor.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I was excited that you reminded me of this faraway phone call that we had once upon a time, way back when we were both getting into the faceting aspect of the gem faceting world.
Yeah, this morning I found a series of emails between us going back about 7 or 8 years when I was editor of the United States Faceting Guild newsletter. And you were putting an article in.
Okay.
And,
Wow. So it does just go back and back and back. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So you're in New York, I'm in Bangkok, and we're both cutting gemstones. I wanted to talk to you. You're my last guest. I just popped up all these people. I've talked to several American cutters so far and tried to talk to people with like a diverse background, because of course there's lots of gem cutters in America, and some of them are doing similar things and some of them are just doing such different things. And I definitely feel like you're one of those people that are doing very interesting and different things than a lot of other people. So I'm excited to hear a bit of your story and share your experience with the world. So maybe for anybody who doesn't know you or haven't seen your work before, can you just give us a little bit of information about yourself, who you are, kind of a quick summary before we get into the full story?
Certainly. So I have a technical background. I come from IT world, and back in 1987, I was working on this project, National Science Foundation project called the Internet. And back then, I was at Cornell University, and there were 60 sites connected to the Internet. It was a 56 kb backbone, and really nobody knew anything about it. And I worked on that for about 12 years as a research and developer, and was able to make enough funds to retire at 42 and to start to get into whatever I wanted to get into. At that time, I also had triplet daughters, and we kind of needed to be home and taking care of the girls. And so I retired from the internet world, and I started a farm for a while, and then I got into restoring classic Volkswagens and dune buggies, and moved from there to vintage campers. And then what happened is, with my daughters, we ended up getting a rock tumbler,
Okay.
and so we started to tumble stones. And then from there, one of my daughters was interested in it, so we got a cabochon machine, Diamond Pacific Genie, and I started making cabochons. And my daughters, she says, this is fun, but let's do something else. Well, I got the bug. I got the lapidary bug, and I just started carving and making cabochons. And I primarily did that for multimedia artists. I was known around town, a large art community here. And I was known around town, if you needed a rock carved or a cabochon or something, this was the place to go. And so I started that. And then I met a gentleman who faceted. He stopped at my house because I had a covered gypsy wagon in my front yard, which is another story. But he knocked on the door, and he wanted to see the gypsy wagon. So we went inside. I told him what I did, and he told me he faceted gemstones some years ago. So he actually worked with Michael Christie and Susan Allen and Hubert Rackets.
Okay.
And I took him into my studio, and he played around with the cab machine and the carving. And then he said, it's not faceting. So I ended up buying a 1982 Ultratech V2, along with a bunch of laps and some rough. And we got started faceting. And we did that for I'd say about 9 months or so. And at that point, I was having a hard time getting rough, which we can talk about later. And I just decided this was a really expensive hobby, and that in order to fund it, that maybe we should go commercial. And so I went commercial, and got advice from two friends. One is a gemologist, and she told me that not to compete on price, that I really couldn't compete on price, and that I should look at a different way to get into the market. And then I had another friend that told me he really didn't want jewelry that looked like his parents or grandparents. So I decided that maybe I had to create my own style, be original, and so that's got into that, and then got into the training.
Okay.
So that's the progression.
So when you were getting into cabbing and then later faceting, were you at all aware or part of like the lapidary club scene, or you were just by yourself?
I was pretty much by myself. I looked up United States Faceting Guild. I looked around, found some designs. I guess I primarily learned, Michael, my mentor, he taught me how to facet freestones.
Okay.
And then he went down to Florida. He's a snowbird, so he left this wintry weather, went down to Florida. And for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, for about 10 or 11 weeks, all I did was facet. I got a bunch of Jeff Graham books. I got some Jim Perkins books. I got a pile of quartz and literally just faceted all winter long. Not much else to do up here.
Mm-hmm.
We get about 100 inches of snow, so you're snowed in. And so I faceted for 3 months, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's how I got up to speed.
Wow. Okay. So
And
that's like that's like a boot camp right there.
yeah, and I ended up going down to Florida to visit Michael, and I took a bunch of stones with me. We met at a restaurant, and I showed them to him, and he laughed at me, and he said, "You're really funny. You go out and buy these stones and bring them down here and expect me to believe you faceted them." And I thought I was both hurt and I was both amused by that. But I had him call my wife, and my wife said, "Yeah, he did cut them." But it was a boot camp. I just worked through all the issues when you have to learn to facet. And if you're going to learn a craft or an art, you just have to apply yourself to it on a continuous basis. Get the mistakes out of the way, and just every stone needs to be a little better than the last stone, and
Yeah.
that's what I did.
So then you started with, well, first cabbing, then flat faceting, but now you've also gone into doing some concave work as well, right?
Yes, I have the Ultratech Fantasy machine. I do a little bit of concave. I do mostly embellishing. I just posted a concave I did this morning. I finished it up yesterday, tribute to my mentor, Jim Perkins.
Mm.
And so when I first got it started, I looked out there to see what people were doing, and concaving was really starting to hit because the machines were finally being made to the public. There were a lot of people doing concave, but they were doing it on their own lathes with their own tools and figuring it out. But now there were machines that would do it. And I looked, and I'm a big fan of Dyer, Diver, Hargrave, and I just really wanted to do what they were doing, but I knew if I did that, then I'd just be following a path and not really being original or blazing my own path. So at that point, I decided I really have to come up with some different techniques, combined techniques, flat facet, frosted facets, concaves, buff tops, and kind of blend them all together and kind of create my own style. And so that's kind of where I headed with the development of the designs that you see that I'm doing.
Okay. So when you were kind of brainstorming, or I don't know if this is probably a long-term process, but when you were developing your style, what you're speaking about, was it purely technical, or was there a conceptual kind of exploration as well in terms of style and what the feeling that you wanted to create?
Well, a couple of things there. First of all, I get a lot of influence from glass. Corning is only about 40 minutes from here, and there's a lot of great glass people around here. And so I'm mostly was influenced early by glass. And so I really don't follow anybody else. If you look at my Instagram, I follow like 10 people and a couple of my students and some friends, but I'm really not in tune to what's going on elsewhere because I don't want to be influenced by that. But I am a big fan of the classic gemstone. I am a big fan of a pavilion, a nice crown, the light return, the scintillation, everything that a classic gemstone provides to me is very important. So I decided I would start taking the classic gemstone and morphing that into different techniques. One of the first techniques I started playing around with was free rotation, where I would lock out my index and spin the gemstone. And then the next one was I read an old article in Lapidary Journal about somebody who made space gems, and he did cabs with opals carved into the bottom.
Okay.
And I said, oh, that may be interesting to do on faceted gemstones. So I did that. and then I started doing some frosting. And each of these, I wrote an article on how to do it, and they were published in Lapidary Journal or Rock and Gem. And now I'm kind of combining those, but I'm also going to be taking off 6 months from custom orders, and I have some new ideas floating around in there, and I'm going to be spending some time trying to come out with something different, but also still using the classic gemstone pavilion and crown, and worrying about that light return and scintillation.
Yeah.
Although I enjoy what everybody else is doing, this is kind of where I kind of like to hang out.
Yeah, I feel that. So when you're building a new design or, working on a new project, is the ultimate goal still jewelry, or is your work outside of, like needing to have a girdle to be able to be set or anything like that? Are you still working in the world of jewelry, or is it just gem art now?
It is, well, it's mostly jewelry. I am starting to transition to the gem art. I am doing larger stones,
Mm,
and the stones will continue to get larger and larger. And the reason I like large stones, it's a big canvas to do a lot of different work on. And so I'm able to apply different techniques and different artistry to a larger canvas. And so I think what you're going to be seeing from me middle of next year is much larger stones, probably more sculptural, certainly not settable, and unless somebody wants to wear something, in a couple thousand carats. But you're going to need a strong neck to wear any of these. But at the same time, I still like, cutting a beautiful chrome tourmaline, or
mm,
having fun with some. I love to facet opal, and so I will continue to be making stones for jewelry, but it's kind of all over the place. It's just growing larger and more complex. I recently got an order to do some really nice cabs. I can't wait to do that because I just find that very relaxing and meditative
yeah,
compared to faceting.
yeah.
So I'm going to be getting some high-end American jaspers and doing a small cab collection, which
Oh,
is
that's
going to be
cool.
fun.
For me, it's been years since I've done a cab, but I have such good memories of, that because that's how I started as well, just in the lapidary club, just, I had my headphones on and just cabbing, free form and just like it is like I think maybe once you've been fasting for some years and you're locked into this certain idea about how things are going to go, and then suddenly you just have the stick in your hand and you just whatever. It's kind of liberating.
It is. It's a lot of fun, and you get to deal with the patterns that the earth is providing us in these wonderful stones. And I keep a stash of really nice ocean jasper slabs.
Okay.
And once we get into about February and the winter blues set in, I just pull out one of those fabulous slabs of ocean jasper and cut it up and cab it. And week goes by, and I'm much happier at the end of that week. It's good
Yeah.
therapy.
No, that's good. It's kind of interesting. This is something maybe I should have started thinking about at the beginning of this series. Like I'm so curious when I talk to other cutters, like because for me, cutting is it's cathartic and it's also very necessary for my own mental health at this point. This has become my outlet for, all kinds of stuff. And I'm just wonder, like, is everyone else having that kind of meditative cathartic experience, or is it just me? What do you think?
Um, I think it depends on why you're cutting. Um, I know that if I have a big order and I have a deadline, the magic kind of goes out of it a little. And,
Mm,
I'm kind of working for somebody at that point, which is fine because, the monetary reimbursement for that allows me to grow the studio, buy different materials, and subsidize my other hobbies. But when I'm just like this last stone I just cut and put up, I just had a blast doing that, and I had concept and idea that I wanted to take one of Jim Perkins' classic design, and I wanted to just add to it and funk it up a little and have some fun with it, but at the same time, bring back the memories of the times and talks I had with Jim Perkins. So that was just an amazing experience, and I'm really happy with the gemstone. The video doesn't do it justice, but I just love what came out, and the experience was a blast.
Well, maybe we should pop that up because somebody asked me, or somebody posted in the chat. Stephen Miles said, "Where did you post your latest stone that was the tribute to Jim?" That's up on Instagram, right?
Correct.
Okay, well, maybe we haven't seen any stones yet, so since we're talking about that one, we should pop it up, and let me just bring that up really quick, and then people can see what we're talking about here. So I'll just pop up Instagram here, and we'll let that one run. So this is, okay, I see it's a clear quartz. So this started as a Jim Perkins design, but then you kind of made it into your own?
Yes.
Oh, I see, with the concave edges and everything like that. So yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
So
it's go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, walk us through it a little bit. What are we seeing? Is it, well, I'll let you tell us. What are we looking at?
All right. So this is called, Jim Perkins called this my brightest brilliant. It's in his first quartz book. So it's a really, really bright stone, and it's got a very low crown, which enables that type of light return. And I decided that since I was going to be playing with it, that I may take some of the brightness out. So I wanted to start with one of his brighter designs. It's a 72 index, so it's odd even symmetries.
Okay.
So we have 9s and 18s.
Okay.
I love odd even symmetries because it just kind of breaks things up, gives a lot of scintillation. And so what I did is I added a extra tier on the pavilion. And then what I did is on the pavilion, I also did a free rotated concave circle.
Okay.
The idea was to kind of make a stone within a stone appearance, because that concave windows right out.
So that's this part right here, right?
Yes.
And then you can definitely see it right in there. That's so cool. I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, and so what I did with that is I put on the angle slicer on the fantasy machine, and I free rotated the stone and cut that in. And then I polished it in with some brushes and some diamond paste. And then I went back and recut the pavilion and to knock out any chips or anything I put in there.
Mm.
And then the crown is his crown, but then I put in the concave facets on the girdle just to kind of have some fun. And
Yeah.
that's what those are there for, is just to break it up, have some fun, and kind of give the outer gemstone kind of its own flavor. And then the inner gemstone is kind of more traditional, but outlined by the free rotation.
So cool. And what a cool way to kind of do a collaboration with your mentor.
Yep. And I was very happy. I got some dispersion out of the quartz, and I got it's a nice piece of clear Arkansas quartz. And it's always fun when you get a little dispersion out of quartz and you get quartz looking nice. When I first started, I did a lot of Jim Perkins designs, and I went into jewelry stores to sell my gemstones. And a lot of jewelers said, "Wow, I didn't know tourmaline came in this color." And I'm like, "Well, no, that's quartz." And they're like, "No, you can't do that with quartz." To which point I just don't have a response. I just kind of
like, there
go,
it is.
well, yeah, there it is. But that's one of the reasons I like Jim Perkins' designs. His motto was 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. and he would just try to make these gemstones, the classic ones, perform as much as possible. He'd take a week or two simply just working on GemCAD and cutting them and getting other people to cut them till he got them where he wanted them.
Okay, so this is yeah, as you said, a lot of grunt work, brute force, trial and error.
Yeah, and that's how he got a lot of his designs. And I use a lot of his designs when I'm doing a classic gemstone that I in nice material that I want to perform well. He's kind of my go-to for sapphires. I like his sapphires design. Interesting story, how I met Jim, I ended up buying Creative Gems natural rough. They were going out of the natural business. They're still in the synthetic business. And I saw that Jim kind of had a somewhat negative comment about their material. And so I kind of wanted to correct that. So I was cutting a lot of quartz out of his books, and I sent him a batch of quartz. And I said, hey, I just bought Creative Gems, and I use your designs, and I just wanted to thank you for the hard work you do on your designs. And I said, from one quartz cutter to another, and I sent him all this really nice quartz. And about a month later, I get this book from him, which is the second quartz book. So it's inspired by Mark Oros, one quartz cutter to another was the title on it.
That's cool.
So, yeah, so we became friends, and he spent a lot of time talking with me and telling me stories of the early days of cutting here, which, you know, when you think about the early days of colored stones in the United States is not that old.
No.
And so, but he knew a lot of people. I heard a lot of great stories, and yeah, it was a lot of fun working with him.
That's so cool. I'm personally bummed that I didn't get a chance to talk to him or meet him. You know, we were talking about having him on here whenever everyone just found out that he passed away. So that was really, you know, it's like a reoccurring theme in the story of me trying to write the history of gem cutting. It's just like, oh, I gotta go talk to oh gosh, rest in
Yeah,
peace. You know, like it's it's
yeah,
it's it's urgent work in my heart at least. So,
yeah.
but it's
We're only
cool.
here.
Yeah.
We're only here for so many stones.
It's true. But it's also cool, you know, to talk to someone like you who talked to somebody like him who talked to his own mentor. You know, I love the lineage aspect of the gem cutting world, and even in the American community where it's less linear and more just sort of group social. But like, um, I love the idea that, you know, you can kind of trace, like you specifically can trace your cutting back to him and he can trace his cutting back to whoever he learned from. And, you know, I'm sure that it probably goes back to somebody in like, you know, the early days of like the 1920s or 30s when there was only like 12 gem cutters and everybody springs from there in some way. It's so fun to think about that.
Yes.
So what do you think? Quartz, is it your favorite material or just is it just abundant so you use it, or what do you think? You have a favorite material?
Quartz is my favorite material because it really has a nice spectrum of colors, and it allows me to cut large stones, again, giving me a large canvas in which to play in.
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as being creative and trying new things, it's an inexpensive way to play.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm not sure that the world is ready for, you know, a 30 karat, beautiful, perfect color tourmaline, all carved up and matted. You know, I think that may be a hard sell. I don't think we're there yet, maybe in
Yeah.
about another 10 or 20 years. So, so it is my favorite. It is a frustrating stone on many levels. Especially when you start getting bigger and bigger, you have to kind of figure out because our machines aren't made for these type of stones in
Yeah.
this size. So you kind of have to figure out different techniques and applications to get there. And then I would say my second favorite stone would be opal, and
Okay.
just because it's just, they're so different and they're so beautiful, and they're just amazing. And you can just tease a lot out of them. I like to facet them. Not a lot of people faceting opal, and so it kind of is a niche for me. Whenever I facet a nice Wella opal, it sells immediately.
Okay.
People grab them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice that, I'm like, oh, I need a couple bucks, I'll go hit my Wello stash and facet one, and it goes.
Well, let's talk about big gems for a second, because you mentioned that, and somebody in the audience, Susan Margolis, had also asked, when you're thinking about working on these future pieces that are going to be larger, how are you planning on polishing, these larger surfaces?
Well, there's two ways to do that. One is the short way, which is to make a lot of small facets. Uh, you know, put 800 facets on it. You still have to polish 800 facets,
Yeah.
but that's a lot different than polishing a square inch facet. And so my saying is, the trick to a good polish on a large stone is a great pre-polish.
Mm.
And the trick to a great pre-polish is to just go over the stone multiple times. So we're working on one I'll show you later. We started with an 80 grit just to bring it down. Then we went to 100 grit, then we went to 120 grit, now we're at 250 grit. And we're going over that stone, every facet, each tier, 3 to 4 to 5 times. Because what happens on a large stone is you just can't get the precision on the machines. Because say I asked you to make a cubic centimeter of Play-Doh. That wouldn't be hard, perfect cubic centimeter of Play-Doh. If I asked you to make a cubic yard of Play-Doh, perfect, it's just, you can't comprehend that because it's just going everywhere. So it's kind of an analogy where when you move into larger sizes, it's just a different way of doing it. And I find the best way to do it is just to go over it and over it and over it till I really get everything at the same depth on that tier.
Okay.
And then I also think it's very important that the girdle, the first pavilion and the first crown facet, the girdle facets, have to be really perfect, because that's where you're building the rest of the stone from. And if you're a little off on those on a big stone, you're going to be way off when you get up farther. So it's not unusual we'll probably go from 250 to 500 to 1,000 to 1,500, and we're probably going to go around each tier 4 to 5 times.
Jeez.
But that gives us the precision that we need. So when we go to a pre-polish, we have a flat facet, and then when we go to the polish, everything's there. So it does take a while, but you got to prep it.
Yeah, I don't like to think about this. You're making me feel a lot of weird feelings right now.
And but these machines just, you have an 8-inch lap and you're doing a 6-inch stone. It's weird because you only got 3.5 inches to work with.
Yeah, no, it's true. I've never tried to do a really big stone. I'm not sure if I ever will, because you kind of just scared it out of me. I don't think I'm the right personality for this. I like to have a goal that I can get more immediately than that. But who knows? Maybe as I get older, I'll slow down.
It's a nice break. And later, if we do a tour, I'll show you the giant faceting machine that we use to really just bring the stone in. And then we go to a glass tech.
Okay. Well, Susan also asked, is it just you, or do you have a team of cutters working with you?
It's myself, and we go back to my mentor, Michael, who I met 8 years ago in the Gypsy Wagon. And he pops in almost daily for a couple hours and works on his projects. And so I do have some company here, and we discuss things and we help each other out. So it's myself and it's Michael for a couple hours. And traditionally, I work from like 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon.
Okay.
So that's my day, and he pops in for a couple hours each day, and I do that 7 days a week.
Nice.
So
Yeah, I feel
yeah.
that. Okay, so questions are bubbling up in the Q&A. I think we should talk about gear now because people are getting curious. Well, I didn't ask you this before, but is there anything that we shouldn't talk about as far as gear? Is there some secrets, some techniques that shouldn't be unveiled in the public?
None.
Okay.
Everything, whatever you give out, you get back tenfold, and and what we share builds on the craft
Yeah, no, for sure.
continuously. And coming from the IT world where everybody just kept everything huddled to themselves, that didn't scale well there. So I take the opposite approach here. So no, I'd be happy to. The only thing I cannot do is share designs that belong to other people.
Right.
And
Well,
I get a lot of people wanting my designs, and they're either not mine or they're part mine, or, and so, and then a lot of the designs I do aren't in GemCAD because GemCAD can't handle them. And so there just aren't any designs. There's just a piece of paper with a bunch of numbers written on it.
so Chris Mowat asked the same question I was already thinking about, which was, what's your technique for quartz? What laps and polish do you use? Because I always avoid quartz. I can do them, but I don't think I have a great technique because it's so frustrating all the time. So I feel like I must not be doing it as good as it could be done. So how do you do it?
All right, so for quartz, if I'm doing a large quartz or I need to take off something, I actually use a 100 grit topper.
Okay.
All right, that's the only thing I'll use the 100 grit topper on because it'll just destroy any other stone. But if you need to get a lot of material off, I'll hit the wheels on the Genie with a 60 grit. I'll come over here with a 100 grit, and I'll get it preformed. However, I'm going to have a lot of chips and a lot of problems because of that. But I'll do the whole stone. I'll get everything done on the 100 grit. And then what I'll do is I'll go to a worn out, that's a top cutter with just a master lap. I then go to a worn out 120 grit crystal light sintered.
Okay.
They're crystal mets. And I put that on a master lap also because that's pretty thin and there's diamond on the bottom. It's diamond all the way through. I don't want to carve my plate, and so I will use that to kind of clean things up a little. From there, I'll go to a 250 hyper edge,
Okay.
and then I'll go up through my hyper edges depending on how big the stone is. I'll go through all my hyper edges on a big stone, but there are on smaller stones I can skip a lap here or there. I'm not a big fan of skipping laps because I think each lap gives you the ability to actually get more precise. I think each lap has a function, not only to remove the scratches, but to start to bring your design in tighter and tighter.
Mm.
A lot of people skip laps, but I think it doesn't take a long time to use a lap if you're just moving incrementally. I like, and it also makes my laps last longer because I tell my carving and cab students, if I had wheels at every 100 grit, it would take me forever to make a cab, but my wheels would never wear out because they were just going 100 grit higher. So from there, I'll go into I'll get up to about a 1500 hyper edge, which pretty much gives me a 3000 finish.
Okay.
On a small stone, I can go from a polish, but on the large stones, I got to get into about 8,000 for a pre-polish for a quartz. And I can do that with either a lightning lap, natural with 8,000 beast polish. I can do that with an 8,000 hyper edge, or I can also do that with what was it called? Trying to remember the name of the lap. Gearloose made them, but then they stopped making them. It'll come to me in a minute.
Okay.
But they stopped making them because the diamond was getting everywhere and ruining John's lathes. So I got a couple of them. I love them. There's no more, but they're about a 3,000 to 8,000. They do a nice pre-polish. So once I get the pre-polish in, the polishes are either the cream way by Gearloose with a little bit of zirconium bat stick on there to give a little bit of a bite, or it would be the Turbofan AG8, which is a cerium lap. I'll show it to you, which I really like. The Gearloose Creamway does a much better finish. You have to be a little careful with this because you can get some ridges with it. But here's the AG8, which is just this big hunk of cerium on this rather weird lap. Now, Turbofan has just announced that they're going out of business.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. I just discovered them like the week before they stopped making laps. I was like, oh no. So, okay.
Yeah, I also use their Fast Lap, which is a chromium with diamond in it, which is very nice for stones in like the 6.5 to 7.5 nose. But the AG8 is much faster. Creamway, I think, just gives a better polish. But when you're doing a large stone, sometimes faster is a little better. I don't think anybody could see the difference without, a 10 loop and be looking for it. But as you and I both know, we scrutinize our gemstones more than anybody else does.
I think if you're talking about a big stone, it almost feels like a loop and a big stone. It's almost kind of silly. Like it's so big, you wouldn't think to get a loop out probably.
Yeah. And so that's the progression.
Cool. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, that's definitely way more steps than I've ever even attempted to do, which is probably why I'm not having amazing success with quartz, or the polishing just takes forever, probably because I'm skipping some of the steps that you're talking about.
And again, as you know, a great pre-polish just lends itself to an easy polish.
Yeah, true. Okay, so Stephen Miles had asked, for quartz, which one of Jim's books would you recommend if you could only get one, or you could only recommend one?
I'd recommend his first quartz book.
Okay.
And I don't know if the other one is actually for sale. Last year, Jim sold his catalog to Kingsley North.
Okay, so if people want to get the book, they can maybe, or the books, that maybe they can get them through Kingsley North.
That's the only place they can get them now. Okay. And he kept a couple books out of the library that he sold to them. And so I'm not really sure which ones were actually, whether he did the one quartz cutter to another to Kingsley North. But the first one just really has some classic quartz in there. We use his flashy cut brilliant in there as our student's first stone.
Okay.
And I would also recommend his garnet book and his sapphire book.
Okay.
So if you bought the quartz, the garnet, and the sapphire, you're kind of covering a spectrum of RIs there that if you didn't want to buy a lot of books, that would be a good way just to cover the spectrum of RIs.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check him out. I don't actually have any of his books in my library, which is crazy. So I'm definitely gonna go check him out after we get done talking, because I want to add some of those to my library as well. So let's talk, well, we're talking equipment. Let's keep talking about equipment while we're on it. So what's your main machine now? What are you mostly faceting on?
I'm mostly faceting on a Ultratech V5 digital. I have two of them. One of them was sent to Ed Perry at HyperEdge, and he souped it up. He
Okay.
put in better bearings. He just like put it on steroids. Uh, the truth is, though, I can cut on either one of those machines and end up with the same result.
Okay.
Uh, once you learn to cut, you can pretty much cut on a lot of different machines because you know how to cut. And once you figure out the machine, it's your stones, they just look the same because I have the classic VL here, and I have the souped up V5, and I have the regular V5. And the nice thing about Ultratech machines, as far as I'm concerned, is the repeatability of them. And I could cut the same stone mineral and the same design on all three of those machines, and I don't think anybody could tell you which machine they were cut on.
Yeah.
And so, but the V5 here behind me is the one that I use the most.
Okay.
That one there.
Yeah.
Michael uses the V5 on the other side.
And then I can see you have a collection of laps around you as well. Do you use different sequences? Like you just told us your quartz sequence, but do you use a similar sequence, for instance, for a garnet or a sapphire, or do you have a totally different sequence for those?
Well, let's say I have a lap problem that that I pretty much buy every lap that comes out there by a good manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking forward to trying the laps that you're selling now.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
And the reason I do that is because I have a lot of students, and I need to be able to understand which laps are better in which budget. And because not everybody has the same budget getting into here. And, some students start off with just a bunch of toppers. Some students buy the whole HyperEdge catalog. So it's really a budget-driven problem for my students. And so I just decided I was going to try all the laps. And as you can see, I have the majority of them behind me. And so it's very convenient because if a lap isn't working or something's not going right, I can just pull out another one and try it. And I find that saves me a lot of time instead of trying to get a lap that isn't working well with the stone, to know that I have one that does and just grab that one, switch laps, and move to it. And so primarily I use the HyperEdge laps for my cutting. I use the gear loose laps for my pre-polishing and polishing. I do have a lightning lap natural, one of the old double-sided ones that you have to put on the master lap with the coffee filter to protect the one side. I've been using that since I started faceting the same lap, and that's my go-to 14,000. Okay. It's just, I've tried lots of other laps, but that lap, and especially all the times I've used it for 14,000, I mean, it's well broken in, it's flat, and it does what I need it to do. But for polishing opal, I will use the HyperEdge 25,000.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but for polishing sapphire, I'll use the Gear Loose Diamatrix with 100,000 on it.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll go up to 200,000 because I'll have a client that says, all my gemstones are 200,000 polish. And I'll say, fine, that's an extra $100, no problem. Happy to do it for you.
Yeah.
But, the customer's right. And if they want 200,000, we go there.
Okay.
Personally, I can't tell the difference between 100,000, 200,000, because at that point, they just look like they're wet. They're just, they're there. So, I do bounce around in the laps a lot, but that's because I'm blessed and I have the resources to have a lot of laps.
Mm-hmm. So Alex Edwards asks, have you tried the new Diamax lap from Gear Loose well, he's specifically asking with zirconium oxide for quartz, but I'm just curious in general because that lap's pretty new. Have you tried it? Have you seen it?
That's the double lap, right?
I think
Uh,
it's a harder, wait, what is it? It's a harder version of the Matrix. I forget actually. I read about it the other day, but now I've already forgot.
oh, no, the harder version of, okay, yeah. No, I'm about to order that one. I
Okay.
haven't tried it yet. I have two diametrics that I use. One for sapphire, it's dedicated to sapphire. One that's everything below sapphire. The one I've used on sapphire, I've used for years and years and years, and it's just picked up a little bit of sapphire dust or in there.
Mm.
And so when I use it for tourmaline or quartz, tourmaline or garnet or something, I run into really some micro scratches, whereas in sapphire, it's just fine. So I have two, one for sapphire and one for everything else.
It's kind of
But
an
no,
interesting thought.
I'm interested in trying it. Yes, I didn't have that problem until I did like a really large batch of sapphires for a client. And then it just kind of picked up some sapphire swarf on there that I couldn't get out.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, this is just sapphire now.
That's a good way to
And the
do it.
nice thing about the Diamatrix is it's not a really expensive lap for, a finished polish.
Yeah.
I think it's a good price. And so, no, I haven't ordered. I'm about to order that. I'm getting ready to do my year-end orders. A lot of these, I don't think John does it, but a lot of these lapidary vendors, even though they're online, they still have this catalog mentality, and then they do their price repricing the first of the year. And I think that we're going to see a big jump
Mm.
when they do their repricing for the year. So I'm just loading up on a bunch of stuff that I'm going to need. Also with the supply chain problem, I just went out and bought. This is the last thing I just saw that it came out. This is the last thing I'm going to buy. I'll probably pick up one or two of them, and so I can't comment on it at this
Yeah,
time.
yeah. So Dan Moore asks, do you decontaminate between each lap? And I think he means the stone. Are you, cleaning the stone between each lap or in your hands and everything else?
Um, so what I do is I keep a very, very clean work area. And I'm always wiping it down while I'm working. And I also have next to my machine, I'll show you soon, is a plate of glass, which is a clean area that when I'm putting stuff down and when I put my nut down, it goes on a clean area and stuff.
Mm.
But I don't really, well, I do. I clean it off with water between laps, the stone. I wipe down the machine. I'm always wiping where I'm sliding the machine so I don't wear off the surface. We also, I pretty much clean my splash pan after one or two stones. I filter my water. So, I'm a,
You're pretty clean.
yes, yeah, yes. And then if I'm going from like a 14 to a 60,000, the stone and everything gets wiped down with alcohol and dried so that there's no problems there.
Yeah.
And if I get things on my hand, I wash them. And so, yeah, I keep it pretty clean.
Well, I'm curious, just speaking about cleanliness, I also use the Diamatrix a lot. I'm wondering when you use it, do you do the whole tier and then clean the stone and then move to the inner ring, or do you do one facet
Well,
at a time?
I have just the full Diamatrix,
Oh,
not the
okay,
split
okay,
one.
okay. Yeah, mine's a split one, so I'm jumping between grits all the time, so I have to always keep
Yeah.
remembering to clean it a lot.
Yeah, so no, I just use the dedicated one.
Okay. And so are you cleaning your laps regularly as well, or I see you're keeping them in
Yes.
cases. Yeah.
Yeah, I keep them in cases, and I had these wooden stands made for the cutting laps back here so they keep dry. I spin them dry. I wipe them off before I put them away. If they're in the cases, I let them air dry out so they don't go in wet. Um, the I would say all the laps are clean before they're put away, except for the diamatrix, which I clean before I use it.
Okay.
So if it has 60 or 100,000 paste on it, I just put it in the container, and then before I use it, I clean it. Otherwise, I'd be cleaning it twice because
Mm.
once I get into that high of polish, I need everything to be clean because I just don't want to go back and do anything over again.
Interesting.
So, but that's just my methodology.
Yeah.
The one thing that is well, it's weird because I don't have water in my studio. Okay, so I have to go into the other part of the house. And my wife says, why don't we get you a sink in there? Why don't we bring water in there? And I said, well, then I never see you. You know, I have to go into the other house and I spend some time with my wife because I love her so much. But so going and cleaning the laps gives me a break. I get to stand up, I get to walk around, I get to clear my head. So cleaning a lap is multi-purpose.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I want to do a tour, but before we do that, maybe let's look at some stones first so people can get some visuals in their heads of if they haven't seen a lot of your work, and then we can maybe walk around and see how are you doing some of these things or just get a little bit deeper because I know your studio is really cool, so I think people will enjoy to see that. So let me pop up. You sent me a bunch of cool videos, so let's pop up a few things and whoops, hold on. I gotta do that in a different. Okay, here. Okay, this should be good now. Yeah, okay. So maybe just tell us a little bit about each stone. I'm not going to show all of them that you sent, but just some highlights here. But tell us a little bit about what are we looking at them as far as the materials, as well as maybe some of the techniques that you're using to do them.
All right, so this is Danburite. This is Bob Keller's classic Cleopatra eye design, which I love. I get a lot of comments saying, boy, you cut that a lot. It's true, I do cut it a lot. I love the design, and you can have a lot of fun with it. So Danburite, and what I've done there is where all the apexes, where all the facets meet, I've done a thin frosted line. I believe Andrew Brown, great gemstone designer, was able to actually do that for me in his Gemcut studio. So all the lines are, all the meets are delineated. And the way I do that is I used to just do it by eye to get the angle, but now there's a program out there and it's become a little easier to do.
Yeah.
And how I do that is I take a HyperEdge 1500, one of Ed's first ones,
Okay.
and I clean it so it's well dressed. And then I bring it down very, very gently, and then I sweep it like this. Okay. And
Okay.
then I take a look to make sure that the line is where I need it to be. I'll adjust a little. Now, what I don't do is I don't go back to that same facet and try again. I go to the next facet, and I keep going on to the next facets till I get that line even top to bottom. And then I'll go back all the way around again. Because
Okay.
if you just keep trying to get that first one, you're going to get a rather thick line.
Yeah.
And so, and then I just go around the HyperEdge lap to new areas that were dressed, because I think that just cuts it in at the right speed and gives me the right texture and presence.
Yeah.
And so that's how I do those.
And so that's your last step then. After the whole thing's done, you go back, right, and do those
Yep.
lines. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. After each side is polished, I just go back and do those lines. And it doesn't take long once you figure out how to do it, and it really gives a dramatic look to the gemstone.
Yeah, I mean, for this one, it's cool because, you don't have a lot of color, so then you have these extra things that are just pulling your eye, and you're just like, and of course, if you've seen this design before, then you kind of know what to expect. But then when you see those lines come in, it adds something totally different into the focal point and everything else. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, and it only adds 100 or 150 facets. That's all.
Yeah, not too much work.
Yeah.
So okay, what are we seeing here?
So here we're seeing a heated citrine, and this is a Andrew Brown design from one of his books. I would say probably first or second book.
Okay.
And again, this is also delineated with the matte or frosted, whatever you want to call it. And so that's able. So what's nice about this one is it lets you see all the facets individually. It kind of breaks it up. And then as the light hits them differently and they change colors, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, and so, this is not a new technique. This was done before me. And I kind of adopted it. And it's interesting now. I started doing it quite a few years back, but I'm starting to see commercial cutters from overseas
Yeah.
starting to do this on gemstones.
Yeah.
So, you know, I I can't take credit for inventing it, but hopefully I reemerged it a little.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I've seen the same thing, people posting stuff in different groups that are, in Sri Lanka or wherever, and I'm seeing them do the frosted edges and I'm just like, "Wow, okay. Everyone's doing this now." And I'm just wondering like, are those guys using that software or are they just doing it by eye? And I never actually found
You,
out yet, but I
yeah, you can do it either way. By eye just takes a little longer, and so I kind of like it when I do something and then it kind of other people start doing it because it makes me have to go do something else. You
True.
know, I you don't want to hold on to. I mean, there are some really great gem cutters that have a specific and patented technique and design they do, and they're lovely and they're great. But unfortunately, since they can't share it, they're doomed to do it for the rest of their life.
Yeah, true. And so when you're designing these ones, are you actually using that software or you're just doing it by eye?
This one, I had Andrew Brown use the software to put it in.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm
and
trying
since it was, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I'm trying to remember there's actually the what the software is called. I think it's just called Frosted Edge Tool. I was trying to look it up on my phone, but it's not popping up easily. Maybe somebody in the comments knows, because somebody had asked what is the software called, and yeah, I think it's called Frosted Edge Tool. It's just a tiny little program that you can run simultaneously with GemCut Studio or maybe with GemCAD too. Um, but it takes your design and then adds those edges and then saves it again. So it's kind of cool. It's like a little utility. But you've not used it, so you're just asking other people to do it if you need it.
Yeah, so I come up with a lot of ideas and concepts for the gemstones. But I work with a couple of gemstone designers, and actually, we have a relationship where I pay them or I trade rough, and they take my concepts and designs and implement them in GemCAD or GemCut Studio. I don't really spend a lot of time using those tools. If I need to optimize something or I need to change something around in a design, or if I'm giving a lesson on how to do it, I play with them. But I'm not one of those people that has to be an expert at everything.
Mm,
And so this is one thing that I do outsource. And I work with some really great gemstone designers, and I feed them my concepts, and a couple of days later, I get a design back instead of me just beating my head
exactly.
against the wall trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's called Edge Frosting Tool, made by Sean O'Neill. That's what that one is. But that's a good idea. Outsourcing that part of it, yeah, there's no reason to. It sometimes can take a long time if it's not your thing. Um, okay, here's a question from the audience. Glenn Wood is asking, what would happen if you polished those frosted edges? You know, like you did the same edges, but then polished them. What effect would that have on either the brilliance or just the pattern in general?
I think I may have given you a video of a gemstone I did that in. I don't know if you picked it out, but if we get to there, I'll point it out.
Okay.
So what it does is it continues to break up the facets, but it also reflects. And it's really quite beautiful, but it can also get a little too busy, I think.
I can
Where
imagine.
the frosted ones give you distinction, the polished ones kind of confuse you.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
and I did a really big quartz. I forgot how. I think it was about 800 carats, round brilliant, where I actually did a delineated polish, and then I did two next to it. So each facet junction had three extra facets on it,
Wow.
and it's really quite beautiful. But it's a big stone, so it works. If I'd done that on a small stone, it would have just been too much.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned opal, so let's check out this one that you sent. I know I've admired a bunch of your faceted opals, because as you said, not too many people are faceting opals, so it's kind of unusual when you see it. But then this one's extra cool because it's also an arrowhead, right?
Yeah. So I was learning how to nap, and it's before pre-COVID, I had on Thursday nights I had an open studio where lots of young folks would come into my studio, and we would all have projects. Everybody has a project tray. And I was teaching everybody how to do lapidary. And one of the ladies knew how to nap, so she was teaching us all how to nap arrowheads. And I just got the idea of a faceted arrowhead. Again, I sent this out to Kim Lemke to do the design, which he did, and then I decided to add the concaves to it. So this is Butte opal from Oregon, and it's Kim's design, and then I went after it with the fantasy machine to put the concaves in it to give it more of the serrated look.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot of fun. Later on, when we do the tour, I'll show you we're doing one of those now that's 85 by 55 millimeters,
Jeez.
but we're doing it in roulated quartz. And what's fun about this video is it's on a 24 karat mirror, which is
Okay.
why you're getting that beautiful gold
Yeah, I was
reflection.
wondering about where that was coming from.
Yeah, so down in the main town near me, there is this optical company that do really strange scientific optical things, and they were selling these 24 karat mirrors, and I thought I'd just see what would happen, and it really gives it a nice effect.
Yeah, no, it's great. Especially because, yeah, the opal, I mean, normally, you're having a lot of play of colors, but this one is more transparent. So, like, having that extra little bit down there gives it a little bit of extra, you know, warm contrast. And it's extra interesting because it's against a blue stone, so you just don't expect to see yellow down there. So it's cool.
Yeah.
Now, this one, I feel like, at least in my mind, this one is like epitomizing your your style. At least the stuff that I always see from you, that I always recognize as yours. It's this kind of, it's kind of a crazy cut. It's such a high dome, and it's just so many facets, and the multi uh, techniques and everything else. Talk to us a little bit about this one.
So this is a nice piece of citrine, and it has 820 facets. And it's a free rotation stone. So The pavilion is a Jeff Graham pavilion off of one of his dome stones.
Okay.
Uh, and then I went on GemCAD and kind of went I think it was every 9 degrees or something like that, and just built a dome in GemCAD on it. So I did the GemCAD on this, and then I optimized it. And then what I did is I guess there's 48 facets as you go around it. It's on a 96. So there's 48 facets all the way around each tier. And I polished those in. And then what I did is in between each angle, I did a free rotation with the mat. So I locked out my index. And so if I had a 45 and a 35, if I had a 40 and a 30-degree tier, then, I just went to 35, and then I did a free rotate to put a line in between those.
Okay.
And then I went around also and did the delineations between them also. So, that's why we have so many facets, is because all those delineations. Now, this is a free rotation technique I developed that creates these very nice oculus-like oval facets because I'm cutting off the edges. Jerax came up with the idea of calling it oculus, which I loved, and I kept that name. There's actually an old lapidary journal article where I actually describe how I do this.
Okay.
And so if you can find the old lapidary journal, but really what it is just putting in rows and rows and rows of many facets and just outlining them and free rotating in. And, the stone is about this big. It's a big
Yeah.
stone
And
because you need all that. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I'm just looking at it for this particular stone. Is this meant also for jewelry, or this is a different kind of a piece, a different kind of an idea?
This is a collector stone.
Okay, because I
And
thought looking at that girdle, I was like, wow, how is that going to work with the jeweler? You're going to give
yeah,
someone a heart attack.
yeah, I've been known to give jewelers heart attacks. But no, this one was done for fun.
Yeah.
I did this one because I just wanted to do a big oculus, and I wanted to have some fun. And I guess it's a weird sense of fun to some people. But so this one is actually sitting in a jewelry store simply as a object of art, just as a curiosity.
Okay. And I
You
bet
know,
it seems like it feels good in your hand, like it's a handpiece thing to hold.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
you want to toss it, which you probably shouldn't, but you do want to toss it. But these 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 get bought up by collectors, and so given that it's citrine, the rough in there is probably about 50 cents a carat when I started, and but there's a lot of hours in there, so basically I have to charge um, a rate for my time on this one, opposed to any real value that the gemstone itself has
Yeah.
traditionally. And so it's hard to figure out a price on these because nobody, there's not a lot of them out there, and there's even sometimes fewer people buying them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a matter of figuring out how many hours I put in there, and then subtracting how much fun I had in order to make it affordable.
Yeah. No, I know how that goes. Sometimes things cost more because you hate them.
Yeah, and things definitely go down in price the longer they're around.
Yeah.
So this is also the same technique. This is a nice piece of citrine that a client sent me to cut, and just a beautiful color. And this one I probably did about 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
It's like a fireball.
And yeah, And the real trick to getting these high domes in quartz to perform is you lose a lot of light return.
Mm.
So you got to make up for it with the interesting patterns and figuring out where your dark spots are going to be, and so. But again, this is a gentleman who collects stones. He doesn't do, he has a case of stones. He buys rough and sends them out to different gem cutters, so they do their style of gemstone, and then he puts them into his collection. And he saw this and he says, I want an oculus, and he sent me this material. So that's what I did.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I think maybe those are some of your. I mean, I think you have a lot of definitive works as far as like things that nobody else has done or nobody else does. But to me, those types are one where I see them and I'm like, I know who did that. Like nobody else would
Yeah,
do that. So it's
there's
cool.
kind of a signature there. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Okay, well let's look at the studio because I know you have a lot of toys in here, and we've just
Okay.
seen some of the products of the toys, but let's see the toys.
All righty. Just give me a minute to get set up.
Okay.
Now, for some reason, I'm not getting my video live on my side.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, we are. I can
all
see you live.
right. So, there we go. So now I'll just switch that around. How's that? Is
Yeah,
that working?
perfect. Perfect.
All right. Let me put a battery on this. All righty. So, this here is my dopping area. I learned very quickly that dopping was so instrumental to faceting that I just dedicated an area to it. And again, maybe a little overboard with the dops, but a lot of these dops are actually carved.
Okay, for special things.
For special things. And one thing I like to do is on large dops, here's a rather large dop, is I like to actually drill a hole into the bottom. So when I'm getting the stone off, because I have to use so much glue and wax, that allows the acetone to actually come in from both sides.
Oh, that's a good
And,
idea.
and then I also create a little dip in them so that the screw and the spindle can go in there and lock them. So when you're carving a really big stone, they want to turn.
Yeah.
So that prevents them from turning. So, and then right here are.
Somebody had asked, are you using wax or glue, or I guess you're using a bit of both?
I use a bit of both. I use Stefan's cold wax technique to create molds for weird shaped stones, but
Okay.
primarily I use the Loctite 404.
Okay.
And then for the glass, I use a UV based Loctite 352.
Cool.
And then I have a UV light. And so dopping area. And then here's my main machine here.
Mm-hmm.
And here you can see some laps. And then we decorate the studio with lots of stone in order to be inspired.
Yeah.
So we have all these beautiful slabs here. Here's the fantasy machine right here. This is my tripod. I've been doing a lot of lives in the morning.
Okay.
And then here's all the various mandrels for concave cutting. Okay, and then here's my library.
Nice. Every gem cutter should have a library somewhere.
Yep. And then there's all my Tom Hurst books. There are a big pile of them. Every student gets one.
That's awesome.
And then while I'm here is a lot of opaque material.
Okay, so that's part. I know you have a really big rough collection, so this is just part of
Yeah.
a
So this is
lot
for
more.
carving and cabbing. That butte opal I love working with. I just recently got this piece in here,
Oh, wow. So
and
are
has,
you getting these directly from the miners?
yes.
Wow, that's so
And
cool.
so this one, I'm actually just going to do a complete set of stones, for earrings, rings,
Okay. Not a
necklace,
giant one.
everything. Not a giant one. There's a couple cracks in it. So, here are just lots of lovely stones that, here's a bunch of slabs. And there's the original rock tumblers.
Oh, wow. That's where it all
That,
started.
that's where it all started. And, I still go into the basement and pick out a bunch of agates and stuff and tumble them on occasion. And although the sound's starting to get to me as I get a little older, I'm not putting up with the sound as much.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you have three tumblers, one for each daughter, or you just happen to have three tumblers?
um, I actually have 11 barrels down there, and then a whole set of um, hydrosonics downstairs.
Okay.
Because I used to do lots of tumbling.
Okay.
And so again, some more beautiful slices up here. So here's the Glass Tech, Ultratech Glass Tech, which is a nice large mast. And then what we're working on is that arrow design here.
Okay.
Uh, here it's blown up so we can see the facets a little better than on the design.
Okay.
And this will give you an idea of the size of the stone.
Yeah, it's
And
humongous. Well,
there's some,
somebody had asked, like, what are, when you're talking about large stones, what is an actual millimeter size of some of the bigger stones that you do?
they get into, well, I'll show you one. It's upstairs. I get into 100 millimeter or so.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay, these are
I'll
huge.
show you some we're getting ready to do. Here's another V5.
Okay.
Uh, here's our index selection.
Okay, that's
Uh,
nice. Nice little caddy.
yeah, there's a nice piece of Wyoming jade that we have sitting up there. Okay, so here are the saws that we use to take down big pieces.
Uh-huh.
So a 16-inch saw and a 10-inch saw. This is a tile saw that allows me to cut shapes instead of straight. So I really like that. Here are the genies. So we have two genies. And then we come down into the carving section.
I love how you have it all laid out. Basically, at any moment you can get inspired and just sit down at any machine and not have to set anything up. I love this.
Yeah, well, I'm very lucky that we have this large space. This was a garage that we finished off. 12 years ago, this was just full of Volkswagens and dune buggies, but we ended up just kind of getting rid of the garage doors and making it a studio. Here's the drilling area, a couple drills there.
Okay. Well,
Um,
I see that you've got the saws inside of a little quarantine room. Do you have problems with dust from like for any of the cabbing machines or anything, or the drills, or does it stay pretty
no,
clean?
it's really a clean room because everything's done in water, or in this case, in the saws, it's mineral oil. I
Okay.
get food grade mineral oil there. But what happens is the mineral oil mists and covers everything.
Yeah.
So that's primarily to keep the mist of the mineral oil from covering everything else.
And does the saws make a smell? Because I remember the Lapidary Club in San Francisco had a very distinct smell that I, have fond memories of, but it was actually kind of a gross,
Yeah.
sort of burning oil smell.
this shuts down the smell also.
Okay, that's good.
So it just kind of contains it there. Here is a Rose engine, which I am learning how to use.
Yeah, this is so cool. I think there's like three people now that are, 3 or 4 people that I know specifically that are playing with these. So interesting. I love that
Yeah,
there's actually like a small community developing around this now.
yeah. And so I'm learning this now. Here is the giant faceting machine. This is the machine that the uh, faceting daredevils built and used for many years. A colleague of mine, Rennie, purchased it, sent it to me, and I kind of rebuilt it and put it back together.
Wow.
And so, I have 15-inch laps I can put on this.
So do
And
you need custom laps for this?
it came with all the laps, and the laps are great. The master lap weighs 36 pounds.
Jeez, that's heavy. If that thing flies off, someone loses their head, basically.
Yeah. Uh, if you look down here, I had to put a belt guard on it. Didn't have a belt guard, so I had to have a belt guard fabricated because safety is paramount in these
Yeah.
studios. You really, really have to be conscious of that. But up here, let me see if I can get you one. This is one of the smaller laps for that.
Oh wow, it's still pretty big.
Yeah, yeah, that's a 12-inch lap. That's an old crystal light diamondback. All those little dots of diamond,
Yeah.
and this one's pretty worn out. That's the one that we start with because it's worn out. We're not that worried about what happens to it.
Okay.
And
Is that
so
a is
this
that a one of a kind machine? Because I heard of a couple other giant machines, but I didn't know if they're related or just similar.
I think they're similar. I think everybody, made their own. These were fabricators and engineers and facetors. There's a lot of facetors that are engineers.
Yeah.
They built it. They would do huge, huge CZs on it. The mast original mast didn't have an angle stop on it or a really elementary one. So I ended up getting a glass tech mast, which is nice. And I have these blocks down here so I can actually build it up higher.
Okay.
And so what we'll do is we'll rough something in over here and bring it up, and then we'll transfer it over to this machine here to do the finer work
Wow.
on it.
That's kind of just handy to have. Like anything big you want to throw at it, you don't have to worry about it too much.
Yep.
That's cool.
And we have a recycling water system here because, I have another water that goes up here. It's not there right now, but this is a recycling system because we really are just working in the 100 to 200 grits. So we really don't care.
Right. Yeah. No
Um,
contamination.
there's a lot of rough and projects down there. Our computer. Here are the large quartzes that we're pondering right now for our projects. Give you an idea of the size.
Wow. These are huge.
They're they're a lot of fun. So a lot of canvas here.
Yeah. Thinking about polishing these, yeah, that's like it could be a nightmare for some, for me, maybe.
It's a commitment.
Yeah. I guess it's a good personal challenge, right? It's a good
Yeah,
meditation. See if you can do it.
and and it is a process where you have to be figuring it out. There's the gemstone in the video,
Oh, yeah.
and
Okay.
and you can see it looks a bit different without all those lights on it. But here's
You
just
can,
a little case.
yeah,
Go
you
ahead.
can definitely still see the circular groove in the back. It definitely
Yeah.
it really puts something into the character of the stone. It's very unique.
So this is a case where I just have a bunch of prototypes in here. Here's a nice seed of life
Oh yeah,
glass
I saw that online. That's so cool.
glass orb. There's some Jack Storm stuff in here. Here's some opal. This is Contraluz Wella opal that I've just been contemplating
Oh
cutting.
wow. That's so
I
jelly.
really, yeah, look forward to that. And then some of the bigger stones hanging out in here. This one, I think this is a smoky we just did.
Jeez, that's also
I don't
huge.
have, yeah. And so this is just a case with some stuff. We have a couple terrariums in here.
Okay,
Uh,
so keeping the life going
bring,
as well.
yeah, and here's an interesting piece. This is a old display case of uh, Florida coral agate calves that I
Cool.
picked up years ago, and on the top it has a little sign that says tax included. I was going to take those out and do projects with them, but the case just looks so nice. So I do a lot of photography, and these are some examples of some of the photography I've done with stones.
Very cool.
Um, Here's a big piece of petrified wood that we just put on a base. And this is a bunch of stuff I'm going to be selling coming up soon. Doing a little jettisoning, some pyrite, amethyst rose. These I really love, polyhedroid agates.
Oh wow, that's so crazy.
Have you ever seen those before?
No, I didn't even know that was a thing.
They're from Pariba, and they believe that there was a calcite deposit, and these agates formed in the voids of the calcite deposits.
Okay, that
And
makes
then
some sense.
over years, the calcite disappeared and left these strange angular agates.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
Yeah. Here's
Really cool. I
a
mean, they're so geometric.
here's a big piece of diaspora,
Mm.
uh, not gem grade. And then let's see, go around. Here's a really lovely piece of art the local artist did, uh, where I asked her to kind of grab the faceting aspect of what I do. And let's see, here's various projects. Here's a really nice old jewelry gemstone viewing box that I'm working on restoring.
Oh, that's nice. I love the old look
Yeah,
to it. It's like almost looks like it's from a ship or something, like you're looking out
yeah,
the porthole.
looks like porthole. And then I also do a lot of glass. This is a Jack Storms piece. This is a Jim Boulez piece.
So then with the glass, does it end up being a lot of collaborations with some of the glass artists? Is that the appeal
Yeah,
to it?
yeah, because I don't do any basic glass fabrication here, so I have to get the glass from everybody else.
That's so cool. That's such an
And,
interesting.
and
What do you think? Is that a new aspect of the faceting community? Like suddenly a lot of I've noticed like in the last 5 years, and especially since the glass tech emerged, like suddenly the whole community of glass blowers and not just blowers, but I guess the glass carvers or
co-work.
the workers, yeah, the glass workers are suddenly like in the faceting community now. It's so interesting. It's such a different thing. Is that new, or did I just miss it?
Um, no, I think it's fairly new. I mean, if you look at Steuben paperweights, they put a lot of facets onto paperweights back. You can go back, um, you know, 80 years and see faceted glass paperweights and arts object, out of very nice leaded glass and stuff. But I think a lot of people are really getting into it now. It's kind of exploding with the glass tech coming on.
Yeah.
There are a few other less expensive ways to do it, but I'm selling a lot of these machines, and I'm giving lessons via Zoom to facetors that are doing glass. I'm doing collaborations. A couple of years ago, we would see the glass folks, glass artists, put 5 or 6 facets into something, and everybody would go crazy. But now they're realizing they can do a lot more,
Yeah.
and so we're really seeing a faceting explosion in the glass industry now, especially in the pipe manufacturers,
Yeah.
because they're trying to differentiate themselves from each other. If you see a glass pipe, some of these pipes are going for $20,000-$30,000,
Yeah.
and so you really do need to add embellishments and interesting things to them. There's some more of the slabs on display. There's also a lot of big pieces over here. I didn't do these, but I've just collected them over the years.
Yeah.
And we just put up fun stuff for inspiration. Here's the riches of Madagascar
Yeah. No,
with all their gemstones.
it seems like you've really created an environment that would be very pleasant to be in, and even if you're having like an uninspired day, I think you could just sort of walk around and find some inspiration somewhere in this room. This is really cool.
Exactly. Here's a piece of ametrine we're pondering right now.
Okay, so you got some orientation, interesting questions to be answered.
Yeah. I did a prototype on this, and it's on my Instagram. Turned out very well. I liked it. And here's a nice pinfire opal, and we're going to be placing that in the bottom of this piece of quartz. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think that's maybe one of the other things that I've seen you do a few times that to me looks, I don't know if it's a signature style because I think some glass people are doing this now too, but this idea of like putting the opal into the bottom of the culet is so interesting, and it's so weird because you just don't have a lot of opportunities normally to see two different materials inside of one stone. It's
Yes.
it's it's kind of psychedelic in a very interesting way.
It's a lot of fun, and it's been around for a while. When I first started, I saw a couple of people doing it, and then I saw that article by that gentleman in Lapidary Journal, and I just saw, and I had this beautiful pinfire meant to be crystal opal, and I just started putting it in there and then enjoying it. In fact, here's a set that is getting ready to be done.
Oh, cool.
And then here's also a really large one that we're going to do. And that'll be, again, a collector. You may like the dop holders.
Yeah, those are nice. They look like some people are using them for like ear plugs, like the
Yeah.
giant ones.
And I like having, if I can add a little bit of art or craft to, various things around the studio, I find it inspirational.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Chris Mowat is curious with the glass tech. Um, what's the difference between the glass tech and a regular faceting machine, and does it need special laps?
So on the glass tech, it takes 8-inch laps. So it's pretty much the same laps that we use when we're gem cutting. But for glass, you just go, you go to a pre-polish and then cerium, and you're done. You really don't go anywhere above 3,000 or 8,000 in a cerium. So, the really nice laps you just don't get to use. It's really just cutting, pre-polish, and polish.
Makes it easy though, right? Like you can have a
Right.
satisfying, quick experience with glass.
Yes, you can. And I think one of your next videos you were going to pop up with a gemstone is a beam splitter. that I did that was
Yes.
glass.
Let me see here. Is it this one? I have a bunch.
No, that's the one with the faceted delineation facets, though.
Oh yeah.
The polished delineation facets.
Oh yeah, you
So
were
that
talking about that.
so this one has, I believe, double polished delineations.
Oh wow. And you can see when it gets into that area, wow, it's like super. Yeah, you can see it's really giving you a very hard focal point. Like you're really being drawn into the center, and it looks kind of like an eyeball, even though it's round. It's
Yeah, and that's a large stone. That stone's about this big,
okay. So it is
and
an eyeball.
yeah, and so it works in that stone. But going into smaller stones, it just gets a little busy.
Okay, the beam splitter. Which one is it? No, this is an opal.
That one. That's
Oh,
it.
this.
No, that's it.
Yeah, let's check that
That's
out. Oh wow.
that's a piece of glass. That's a beam splitter where they glue four pieces of glass together. A lot of people have been cutting these. They're rather inexpensive. You can get them on eBay and various places. This one turned out really well. What I did on this one is I made sure that where all the glass met, there's four pieces,
Mm-hmm.
that it was in the girdle where they met.
Okay.
And that way I was able to really optimize the dispersion by retaining equal amounts of all the different pieces of glass and having them work together. So this was more of an orientation. A few people contacted me and said, I can't get my beam splitters to look that way. But it was, for anybody that's cutting them, is you really want the split of all the glass right in the girdle so that you have all four pieces of glass
In the
centered and
stone.
as
Okay.
equal as possible.
That makes sense. What's the original purpose of these cubes? Like, what are they made for?
They're made for scientific applications in order to get different wavelengths
Okay,
out of light.
interesting. Okay, there's another question on my list here. Going back because we looked at that big piece of opal for a second. Susan Margolis asked, "How are you cutting opal for yield?" And she says she's observed the matrix on the butte opal, and it seems to differ from well, you basically getting fractures, and how are you able to retain a big piece without getting fractures and stuff?
So I cut butte opal, I cut Mexican fire opal, and I cut Wellow. I love Australian opal, but I just don't get a return on faceting that I get on the other opals, which are less expensive. The Wella opals, which are probably the biggest opals I cut, I buy from a gentleman who goes to Ethiopia and buys the top opals. Then he comes back to Canada and I buy from his like top 3%.
Okay.
So it's a very refined, rough process. Now, if you're looking for Wellow opals to cut, what you want to look for is the weight. Okay. You want to pick them up and find the heavier ones because the heavier ones have less water in them and they're more apt to be stable. Also, I don't cut any opal that isn't like 5 years old or so out of the ground.
Okay.
When you take opal out of the ground, in the first 3 months, you're going to get 20%, you're going to get the majority of your crazing and cracking within those 3 months. Okay. And so it's got to be out of the ground for at least 6 months to see the majority of the crazing and cracking. But then after a year, you'll get another small percentage out of that good opal. And so, I recommend to people buying opal to facet, it's got to be a year or two out of the ground. All opal is going to, opal is just amorphous circular crystals. It hasn't crystallized, as you know. And opal's just drying out. And all opal's going to turn to dust eventually, not our generation, maybe not next, but eventually it's just going to dry out, crystallize, and crumble. And so you want to get the stuff that's going to do that last. And so if you're buying Wellow opal and you have a big parcel, feel them, the weight in relationship to the size. The heavier ones are usually going to be more stable. I find that in the Wellow opals, the whiter it is, the milkier it is, the better. The fire opal, the Mexican fire opal I cut is 25 years old. And it's from an old collection, and I just never have any problem with it. The Butte opal is a little different in the sense that it may have been mined, the eggs may have been mined a long time ago, but it's not until you split them open till the air gets to them and they start to have problems. So if you look at this one here, you can see I have a rather large crack here.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a stone here. I got a clean area here and a clean area down there. So what I'm going to do is on this, I'm just going to cut the matrix right off. And then I'm going to start whittling down with a hand saw until, not a machine saw, but a small saw, until I can get the pieces I want out of it.
Okay.
And then as far as being careful cutting opal, it's tough because opal is almost as tough as quartz. Everybody's like, oh, quartz is so soft, but it's tough. And so, difference between hardness and toughness there. And so, I'll put that on an 100 grit and go at it. Because if it's going to fail, I want it to fail on me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be like gingerly cutting an opal and then give it to a jeweler and they go to set it and it shatters, because, when I do give it to a jeweler and they chip it and try to blame me, I then show them a picture of me grinding the crap out of it on 100 grit. And I'm like, look, it kind of held up for me. I don't know what you did to it, but, it kind of made it through my madness. And so, I'm not very delicate on the opal because, if it's going to blow up, I want it to blow up on me. But traditionally, let me see if I have one here. Traditionally, they work for me. So here's a nice piece, and has a lot of matrix around it.
Okay. Oh yeah, there.
And let me get it in there close.
It's got a lot of play of color in there.
Yeah, a lot of matrix. And then this one is so light. I'm not going to cut it. It just feels wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And after you've cut Wellow opal for many years, you can just feel it. And so this one I'm just going to sell as a specimen.
Okay.
So every now and then I get a parcel in and I just go through them. And I'm like, okay, no, that one's not going to make it. Now I can sell the rough as a specimen for 2 to 3 times what I paid for it. So it's not a problem. But if I went to cut that, it would give me a headache.
Yeah.
And then I also wrote an article on faceting Wellow opal that's in the Lapidary Journal article also.
Yeah. Do you ever need to stabilize any of your stones?
No, I haven't. I have just recently got a vacuum, and I do want to stabilize. I haven't gotten to it yet, but there is a few stones that I do want to stabilize because I do facet a lot of opaque material. I think a little more than most people do,
Mm-hmm.
and so there is some material I want to stabilize that I have to get around to doing that.
Okay. Well, I got one more question for you before we're over for tonight. I know you mentioned this a couple times in passing, but let's talk about teaching a little bit. Because I know for me, as a gem cutter, teaching has become a really central part of my experience as a cutter and as a learner. And so I'm wondering for you, how did you get into teaching, and what kind of a role is it in terms of like your daily or yearly lifestyle as a cutter?
Okay, good question. Um, I cannot recall how I got into the teaching. That one, I can't recall how we did that, but I know that the benefits of teaching, from my point of view, other than just continuing the craft, which I think is the most important part of teaching, is there's a lot of young people that want to learn, and there's not a lot of opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
so by continuing the craft, I feel like I'm adding, to the world of faceting instead of just taking. So I do love teaching, and the old saying to teach is to learn twice really is true. And so being able to teach is fun, but it's also, on the other side, it's really kind of nice and profitable because I get paid for a lesson, I sell a machine, I get a commission on that, and then I sell rough to the student.
Mm-hmm.
So it does fund the studio, but at the same time, it is really a lot of fun to teach the craft to people that are interested in it. And what's nice is when somebody wants to learn to facet, they're really interested in it because it's not a cheap thing to get into.
Yeah.
You have expensive material, you have to learn, you have to buy the machine. And so when I find people that want to learn to cab, it's a different group of people. Whereas the people that want to facet are passionate about it. And working with those folks is very exciting. We were doing about 2 students a month at one point. We don't really want to do more than that because we have our own cutting and everything to do. And then COVID just kind of ended that.
Yeah.
And so now we're doing Zoom lessons. I've done them as far as Netherlands. And it's a lot of fun because what I do is they have the same machine. I send them a piece of material that's already docked and a design. So on the same machine, on the same design, on the same material, we cut together. And I have one Zoom here that I can watch them, and then I have another Zoom behind me so they can watch my machine. And we literally take 4 days, 3 hours a day, and cut a complete stone from start to finish. There's 2 1-hour lessons before that to make sure we're set up for success.
Yeah.
And I think the probably the biggest thing that we teach when we have the students that come in here is confidence. It's really fun working with people and helping them gain the confidence to be able to take on something like gem cutting and succeed at it. Because you do have to not only repeat yourself and learn it, but you have to believe in yourself if you're going to be doing this. Recently, we've run into a few issues where the machines are taking three months from order to delivery because of the supply chain problem. So we give a student a lesson, and then 3 months later, they get their machine and they go, "What did we do?"
Yeah.
And so I just wrote a 2-page paper that I sent to Ultratech. They're going to put it in their sometimes newsletter, which is basically called Your First 10 Stones. And it's kind of an outline on what to do and what not to do to get through your first 10 stones. There's a phrase I picked up recently in a lesson I'm taking on music production, and it's called imperfect action. And I think it's a great term, and it means that you have to move forward, you have to take action, but you're not looking for perfection, you're looking for progress.
Mm.
And I have the students that seem to be caught up the most are looking to do a perfect stone on their first or second stone. They're looking for perfection too early. And that's hard to do because you don't know how to cut a stone. You have to learn how to cut a stone before you can develop perfection for it. So this paper is really about cut 10 stones, make each one better. Don't show them to anybody, but get through, learn how to do it, practice, get it down, keep a notebook, and do harder stones in steps. I see a lot of people that will cut their first quartz and then they'll try to cut a tourmaline with 200 facets in it. Too big of a jump. Take your time. Not everybody has to end where we began. Not everybody has 3 months to dedicate to cutting every day.
Mm-hmm.
They have these little sections that because they have that outside light, but if you're going to do it, just every chance you get, and don't worry about perfection, worry about progress.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I appreciate that sentiment. It's a good thought. And it's definitely, I think having those smaller achievable goals means every time that we finish a stone, or even every day that we cut, we achieve something. And then we're excited for the next, whether it's the next step or the next stone, you're like validated, like, yes, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I like that.
Yeah, because you get a positive response as you make these small steps. And one of our mottos here at Hashnu Stones that Michael and I use is every stone has to be better than the last stone. So that way we never relax. We're always trying to get that polish better, to get those meat points better, to try new material. And if a stone doesn't live up to our expectations, it becomes a piece of rough and it gets cut again.
Well, that's a good way. Nothing gets wasted.
No.
Cool. Well, I am very, very happy that we got to have this conversation and just get a little glimpse into your world. So thank you so much for the time, Mark.
Well, thank you. And I'm just to say I'm enjoying your new book. Anybody out there that's watching, I highly recommend Justin's new book. It's a really good read. And if you get by here in the summer, please open invitation to stop by.
Well, thank you. You're definitely on my list of people that I want to come and visit. And for anybody who's watching this that isn't already following Mark, Hashnu Stones on Instagram or on the web or on Facebook, is there any other way people should find you?
My website or my Instagram is the best place to follow me.
And then what about if people want to learn, if someone wants to be your student, they can just contact you through one of those ways? Is that the best way?
Yeah, message me. If you go to my website, there is a Learn to Facet page, which has a contact form. And you can always message me either through Facebook or Instagram, and be happy to respond. And, if you have a general question about faceting, get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to help.
Cool. And so, yeah, for anybody else who's looking for a Christmas present, as Mark said, the book is there on the website, Magus Gems. And aside from just thanking Mark, I really want to just put a thank you out to the audience, not just today, but for really the last 16 months that we've been doing this show. It's been a blast. Mark, you're kind of like the icing on top of this whole giant awesome cake that we've been building for, all of COVID. And it's just been so great to talk to so many gem cutters from all over the world, doing so many different amazing, inspirational, incredible things. So I'm just really, really happy to have been able to connect, despite that we're all locked down and, maybe disgruntled and depressed and looking for inspiration. And it's just been so cool to still be able to connect with people, even when we can't travel or do trade shows or anything else. So thank you. And thanks to everybody for being a part of it this whole time. Well, I guess that is the end. It's the end of the year. It's the end of the show. It's the end of this talk, this conversation. So, uh, Mark, I'll see you sometime next year. And to everyone else, hopefully I'll see you either in Tucson or on the road or wherever our paths may cross. So yeah, this is Justin K. Prim signing out with Gemcutting Conversations. And I'll see you later, Mark. I'll talk to you somewhere on the road.
I'm sure we'll be in touch. Take care.
Okay, see you
Be
later.
safe.
Yeah, have
Bye.
fun. Bye bye.